Hey everyone, very quickly before I jump into the video, I want to announce that I made a Facebook group for this YouTube channel, and obviously I'm going to call it Nocturnal Astrophotography, and I will leave a link in the description below so you can go and check it out and possibly join. And I did that because I wanted a place where I can connect with you guys more, give you guys regular updates as to what am I working on next, what videos are coming up next, what reviews are coming up next. And the second main reason why is because I've been getting more and more questions about astrophotography and how to get started, what sort of equipment to use. So I'm hoping that I could use this opportunity to build a community, and then we can use our combined knowledge to either help other people get started or help one another make progression in this amazing journey of astrophotography. And so if you're like me and you've got crappy skies to deal with, I would encourage you guys to hop on over to the Facebook group, which again, I will link in the description below, and come check it out. I hope that you guys will join. And with that being said, let's actually get on with the video. Hey everyone. Angus Wong here, and welcome back to the channel where I talk about and film all kinds of things related to astrophotography. And on top of that, I am also the part-time meteorologist for San Francisco, here to give you an update on No Sky July. And not surprisingly, still can't see the sky. I haven't seen the sky for like a month and a half now, and it looks like we're gonna roll right into August. So in this video, I'm going to give you my first impression and my first thoughts about the Radian 61. And I'm not gonna go into too much detail. That's really reserved for the second part of the review, which I will be releasing about 1 to 3 months from now, just because I need to have more repetition with the telescope. Right now, most of my thoughts are just first impressions. The more I use it, then I can provide more of a detailed review. So that's why there will be a part 2 to this review. There will also be a part 3 where I compare this to what I think would be its natural competitor. I don't know what that is yet. Well, I have some idea, but so yeah, this will be a 3-part review, and I think that I'm going to be doing this for most of the telescope that I review. So if you like this sort of content, then I hope that you will consider liking the video and possibly even subscribing, because I will try to upload more regularly now that I've got a slew of reviews coming up. I also don't know if I can actually demonstrate like a test run of how this would set up in my mount and do a session with you guys, just because of that nonsense going on in the background in the sky. I haven't had a clear night in what feels like months, and I don't think I'm gonna have a clear night tonight. So I do apologize for that. And before we go inside and talk about the specs and more details about the Radian 61 and go over some of the images, I do want to mention that I purchased this on the used market with my own money. So I'm really not obligated to give this either a favorable or an unfavorable review. What you're about to see and hear will simply be my thoughts and my initial findings with this telescope. And with that, let's go inside and we'll talk about some of the specs of the Radian 61. One more thing I want to mention before we go inside, and you may or may not already know this regarding the Radian 61, and also it may not even be all that important to you. I know that it's not important to me, but the Radian 61 is based on another telescope called the Sharpstar 61 EDPH2. And from my own research, these two telescopes have practically identical specs. And can I call this a rebrand of the Sharpstar? No, because I know that OPT has taken the time to differentiate the Radian 61 from the original Sharpstar 61. The core telescope may be identical, but they put some effort into making the Radian 61 a little bit different, and more on that later. As the title of this video suggests, everything that I say or mention here will only be based on my 1 to 3 times of using this telescope. So everything I say will be really a first impression because I haven't used it enough to form an in-depth analysis of what I think of this telescope. So please look forward to that part of the review in the next video, because maybe after using this 2 to 3 months, I would have a better idea of what this telescope is all about, and I can give you a better in-depth analysis. But for this video, it's only going to be a first impression. So hopefully you will stay until the end of this video, and also stay tuned for the next video that I put up for the Radian 61. So let's start with what I think this telescope was meant for. Given the specs of this, I think this is really meant for wide field astrophotography, and this is a relatively fast system, so you should be able to gather quite a bit of light without too long of an exposure. This is, after all, an f4.5 system, and with this triplet construction, having 3 ED glasses, you should get relatively color-free pictures, at least based on the specs. Now, I cannot comment on what type of glass it's using, because I think at this rate nobody really knows, and OPT has not disclosed what type of glass it's using. I've spoken to them as well, and they can't really tell me, so I don't have information on the type of glass it's using. But on paper, because this is a triplet, the color correction should be fairly decent. So I actually want to spend a little bit more time to talk about the build quality. And I know that I said I've only used this maybe 1 to 3 times, but there are some things that I've noticed that is very apparent to me. First of all, yes, I did purchase this used, but upon receiving it, I sort of inspected it, and it doesn't look abused. It looks used, but not abused. So I don't think anything that I'm about to mention now is from prior abuses and whatnot. And I also want to apologize to people who already own the scope, because I know that you spend X amount of money on a telescope or any product, and the last thing you want is somebody to criticize it. But however, in order to be truthful, I have to say that when it comes to build quality, the Radian 61 is satisfactory, but not the best. And I'll go over some of the findings that I've discovered. So first of all, this lens cap right here, I don't know if you guys can see it through my camera, and I'll probably try to do a close-up of it. But the overlap between the lip and the actual dew shield is actually very thin. As a matter of fact, I think my pinky is thicker than the actual overlap. What does that mean? It means that it falls off very easily. I can't tell you how many times where I put this in my backpack, took it to the dark side, and by the time I got there, it's already loose. So yeah, maybe it was a design decision, but I don't understand why a lens cap has so little material to the point where it just falls right off. All right, now that I put the lens cap back on, we're gonna go down from the lens cap to the dew shield. Now, this dew shield, it will extend it will hold its position, but for whatever reason, and maybe this was a one-off example, but my Dushio rattles. And I'll put it close to my mic and you guys can probably hear it. Yeah, like I said, it will hold its position if you extend it, but it rattles. I don't really understand why that is. And then the last thing I want to mention when it comes to the build quality is the focuser. I'm going to loosen this up, and I think it'll be pretty hard to pick up on the mic, but during operation, when you're finding focus, it's not the smooth of a focuser out there, because as I'm adjusting it, then maybe you guys can pick it up. Hopefully you guys heard that, but in case you couldn't, I'll try to describe it for you. As you're adjusting the focus knob to find focus, it's extremely notchy. It's notchy to the point where you can, one, feel the feedback through your hands, and I don't know if my mic is picking it up, but you can actually hear the sort of grind coming off of it. And so that's why I say that, you know, for build quality, it's satisfactory. It doesn't affect the performance, it doesn't affect the function, but that doesn't mean that it's stellar either. And I just want to mention that, you know, the focuser will hold your camera gear, no problem. It's just that, you know, it's a little bit loud during operation. This is sort of like paying Lexus money and you got a Toyota Corolla interior. One last thing I want to mention when it comes to the build quality is that we have to remember this is a $1,000 package from OPT. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Okay, so now we're on to the part of the video where I think most of you would be interested in, the optical performance of the Radian 61. And, you know, a lot of times we become interested in a certain telescope because of the spec sheet. It gives us our desired focal length, how fast it is, what kind of construction, is it a doublet, triplet, or reflector, or SCT, or whatever, right? But what you don't get from a spec sheet is the actual optical performance, real life optical performance. You can probably find this on the forum or look at other people's picture. So I want to demonstrate a raw, unedited, individual subframe that I took with the Radian 61. So let's go into Photoshop. And what you see here is an individual subframe of Row of Yochi that I took from a Bortle 5 skies. And this was imaged with no filter because I wanted to see the pure optical performance of the Radian 61. And first things first that I can already spot and talk about would be the halo around Antares. I'm not too concerned about halos because, you know, even with my William Optics Space Cat 51, I get halos from that too. And I think it's really just a byproduct of using relatively fast optics. I don't understand why. So optics experts, if you're watching this, please comment as to why I'm either right or wrong about, you know, faster optics producing halos. But it's not a big deal to me because I can usually take care of this in post. But what is concerning, what is different than the Space Cat is that I get this one main halo, right? But there's also a secondary halo surrounding the main halo, and I hope that YouTube can pick this up. So I just thought that was unique and kind of wondering why there's a halo upon a halo. But the most concerning thing that I want to talk about is the reason why people buy triplets. The reason why people buy triplets and the reason why they're so expensive is because they're supposed to take care of this bluish purple fringing that you see. This is called chromatic aberration. And the way that it works is that you have 3 sets of glass that are supposed to align the 3 main wavelengths of red, green, and blue. So they line up and they don't leave any fringing. But, you know, as you can see here, there's quite a bit of bluish purplish surrounding these bright stars. And it's just a little bit disappointing because this is the whole reason why triplets are so admired, and the reason why they're so expensive in our hobby is because triplets are supposed to get rid of this purple fringing, this chromatic aberrations. As a matter of fact, I've seen doublets that produce almost no chromatic aberration. And so the fact that this is a 60mm triplet coming in at $1,000 US dollars, and I'm still getting chromatic aberrations, I'm sorry, but that is disappointing. Because like I said, you know, the whole reason why people spend so much money on triplets is to not have to deal with this in their data. So that sums up my first impression of the optical performance. You're probably gonna have to deal with halos, and you certainly would deal with chromatic aberration. So there's that. The Radian 61. I'm going to try to sum up my first impressions of the Radian 61. You know, first of all, this is a decent telescope. It will give you a decent image, as you will see later on with my Eagle and Omega Nebula. And you can really understand why there's such an appeal for these wide field refractor. But I kind of have to pull back a little bit and just talk about some of the attributes, some of the characteristics that I've already discovered having used this like 3 times at most. And I have to remind myself, this is a $1,000 package. Now I appreciate OPT for putting together a ready-to-go package with most of the hardware and accessories included, so you can just take it out of the bag and start using it right away. But I think that this telescope it's a good telescope, but I think there's quite a bit of flaws in it. It's hard for me to overlook the build quality. It's hard for me to overlook the optical performance, even though I can, you know, take care of most of that in post-editing. But in the back of my mind, I know that it's in the data. The halos are in the data. The chromatic aberrations are in the data. And I can't solidly recommend one way or another yet because I've only used this 3 times, and that's why this is a first impression video. I just want to end with reminding the audience that this is a $1,000 package. Whether or not that's worth it to you, that's for you to decide. If you ask me personally, I think that there are alternatives that I would rather explore first before getting into the $1,000 range. And so with that, I hope you will look forward to the next part of the review where I give a more in-depth analysis of the Radian 61. And until then, I hope the weather will start cooperating so I can have more regular uploads for you guys. So please consider subscribing. Please consider liking the video and commenting. And I will see you next time. Clear skies, everybody.